Welcome to Sportstalk On The Max, everybody. Tony Ross along with Doug Griffiths, and we welcome all those who are watching via the YouTube channel at Max 98.3 stream, exclamation point behind that stream. So again, it's Max 98.3 stream with that exclamation point at the end. We have got a lot to talk about here. And of course, it's the eve of the Indiana High School Boys Basketball Regionals, Doug, and a couple of area teams still in it.
Yeah, just think, Tony, last week at this time, we knew, we were covering the Tippecanoe Valley sectional and knew John Glenn to get to the championship game would have to beat Bremen, who they had lost to by double digits earlier in the month. And then if they were fortunate enough to win that game, we figured Tippy Valley would be waiting for them, and that was the case. And in all honesty, we thought and talked off air that our high school boys basketball season covering games might be over, but John Glenn surprised a lot of people last Saturday with their effort, and it certainly wasn't a fluke. But congratulations to Travis Hanna and his Falcons for winning a second consecutive sectional title, which no matter what, any year, that's quite an accomplishment, but to do it after you lose Bryson Hanna is even a greater feat. So as a result, like you said, tomorrow night we'll be at South Bend Washington High School, and another huge task awaits Glenn as they face mighty South Bend St. Joe.
North Judson, they're playing at home against Gary 21st Century, very athletic team with 20 wins this year. The Jays, they won't go away. They got 15 wins under their belt against the 9 losses. This North Judson team is playing right now their best basketball of the season.
Yeah, and talk about surprising the Blue Jays. Even though they were playing that sectional on their home floor, they beat a very, very good Hebron team that only had 2 losses. Again, Judson gets the luxury of playing on their home floor tomorrow. And you talked about 21st Century Charter. They're 20-6, ranked 12th in the state. By the way, 4 of those 6 losses have come to 4A schools. Of course, this is for the 2A regional title, and it's a 21st Century team that's rattled off 11 of 13 straight victories. And in fact, they haven't lost, Tony, since January the 19th. So, and you talk about athleticism that they have. They have 2 sophomores that lead them in scoring. Terrence Hayes is their leading scorer, just under 20 a game. And then they have Ron, Mosley. Those 2 are going to be quite a handful for Judson. But again, like I said, Judson proved last week they can do it. And, we sort of did a double take when we saw that score come in that they had knocked off Hebron.
Well, and again, it's just tough to beat Judson at North Judson.
Yes.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yep.
That's the situation. And, this Blue Jay team really has become even more scrappier in the sectionals, at least in this postseason so far, than they have all season. And not that they weren't scrappy beforehand. That doesn't sound correct. But they've turned it up a notch. And when you start believing that you can do things, and you can start understanding how and why it's been so important to be detailed in what you're doing and understanding why you're being detailed in what you're doing, good things will happen if you put that effort in. And that's what Judson's been doing. They're doing the little things that are winning them ball games right now. And they're going to have to against Gary 21st Century. Here's the deal. Judson wins this game if they can hang on in defense.
Yep.
If they can slow down Gary 21st, they win. No qualm. Now, does Gary 21st play defense? Yes. But they like playing chaotic. If Judson can handle the chaoticness that they're going to bring defensively, which means you got to be in your spot if you're facing full court pressure. people have to be in their spots. People are sometimes going to have to come to the ball a little bit more. Little things. Understand what's happening on the court so you can make your adjustments and then go execute what you're supposed to execute. And I think if North Judson can do those little things, they give themselves a really good shot to go to a semi-state. And I'm fully behind that. But Gary 21st has shown that if you don't slow them down and you don't rattle them, they'll blow you out of the gym.
Yeah, you do not want to get into a track meet with this. You do not want an 84-foot game with this team. So tempo will be critical for Judson.
If I'm Coach Chisholm, I'm probably looking at the Glenn Tippy Valley game.
Yep, good point.
And then I'm figuring, okay,
take the air out.
Let's see.
If you can, again, Glenn did a really good job handling Valley's pressure, and believe me, Valley trapped. They did a little bit of everything
that they could,
and
try to get momentum back.
I mean, Chase Miller and company really took good care of the ball, and that's why Glenn's season didn't end last Saturday night. And Judson, heck, let's be real. Judson's playing with house money. I mean, no one expected them to beat Hebron. No one expects them probably, other than over there in Judsonville, to beat this 21st century team. So you can go out there and play loose, just like Glenn can too. You'll be a prohibitive underdog, and that's for opposing coaches. That's what makes teams very, very scary. And I think we saw that last Saturday night, Tony. And you would agree that I really thought as Glenn made a game of it, and as that game wore on, Valley got really, really tight. And you saw it, especially in their outside shooting. I mean, you and I off the air during commercial breaks during our broadcast, we commented their 3-point shots weren't even close. There were 2, 3, 4 air balls that I could remember, and it wasn't like shots were going in and out for Valley. And Glenn threw that zone at them, and expect Judson too. That's the other thing. When you're an underdog, you can do all kinds of things, and not that you can reinvent the wheel and completely change how you play, but you can throw a lot of things at teams that and
by pure effort.
Yeah, and just the littlest thing can, again, we're talking about young people, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And we, again, saw it firsthand at Valley. That zone of Travis Hanna and his coaching staff implemented really caused the Vikings fits.
Again, you can catch this on our new YouTube channel. It's Max 98.3 stream, and then an exclamation mark behind that there. And so that's the easiest way to get on our YouTube channel right now and watch the show here for the remaining 45 minutes or so. St. Joe and John Glenn is going to be different than what the first meeting was. And I was at practice a couple times this week, and I love the game plan that Travis has for his boys. But I really feel this game is going to be different than what we saw against Tippy Valley just because the players are different. And so the four-corner stall, it'll probably be in the bag, but Glenn's just going to have to play a lot better than what they did in the initial meeting. And keep in mind when Glenn played South Bend St. Joe, John Glenn wasn't really playing well at all, and they were trying to find their role niche. Do I have the right combination out there? And the game got so far out of hand, Travis has said, it was also in the middle of a 3-game week. 2 of them were back-to-back. St. Joe was the first game.
Yeah, a lot of factors went into that.
So there was a lot that went into that first meeting that a lot of people don't understand. Now, is that taking anything away from St. Joe? No. They are good. This is a team that comes in, a 46% shooting team from the floor. Let me repeat that. That's a 46% shooting team. They're a mid-range jumper team and transition team, which means you got to figure out how to play some really damn good defense. And that's what Glenn has done. And I bring this up because when you look at, even throughout their schedule, even in the losses, Glenn has been in ball games through third quarter 80% of the time, even during those losing streaks.
Yep.
So they just would make a turnover, or they would do something from an offensive standpoint, not a defensive standpoint, but an offensive standpoint, that would end up having the game get away from them. So this defense is going to take its hits tomorrow night, meaning Glenn. They're going to take their hits. But this St. Joe team is not a contact team. They've been athletic and gifted enough to where you don't have to worry too much about foul trouble. But they create foul trouble because of their athleticism. And Chase Konechny having an amazing year. Over 500 points this season again. Back-to-back years for this kid. And he's just a junior.
Yeah, he's a 6'4", like
6'4" junior. Then
averages 19.9
well, then you got
a game.
the Notre Dame's coach. Notre Dame coach's
Nate
son.
Shrewsbury.
Yeah, Nick.
Sophomore.
A sophomore. Believe it or not, he hasn't got a lot of touches.
He had 13 against Glenn, for what it's worth, in the first meeting.
But again, that game was a blowout at the fourth quarter. That was one of the yuck games that Glenn has had.
And that was a game, after 3 quarters.
After 3 quarters, it was good. But St. Joe being St. Joe pulled away, and that was all started again by what I just talked about. Bad pass, a turnover here, a turnover there, a turnover here. And the game just got away so quick because next thing you know, they're firing threes from outside and hitting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just tough to stop a train. And if Glenn can avoid that from happening tomorrow night, it could be a really good competitive contest. I, honest to goodness, feel that way. I really hope that the Falcons will figure out a way to slow down the transition part of it because they're very good at it. They got the athletes that are very good at it. But if Glenn's going to win, the defense is going to have to win it. And Carson Kruger. Carson Kruger has got to put up 10 to 15 points.
It's interesting you said that. He had 14 in the first meeting, and no other Falcon had more than 7.
Now, they're going to be aware of that, Doug, but they've also, and you have probably checked his stats and his game line. After that 14, it's been a struggle.
Yeah.
He's been hit and miss. Carson he cannot afford to be hit and miss. He is going to be an integral part of how this game goes for John Glenn.
Interesting you say that because Carson had just 2 against Valley, and Joey Shue, who had his career game the night before against Bremen, he had 5, but Chase Miller was so doggone good, Tony. I mean, he had 18 and was just lethal, got to the line early and often, was hit 12 of 14 shots, and it was because Miller was so aggressive and really, once he put his foot on the accelerator, he just didn't let it go and let it off, and as a result, he lived at the line and really gave Valley fits. I would look for Glenn to do much of the same against St. Joe. And you talked about, Konechny has an offer from Toledo. I'm sure more offers, Division I offers will be coming his way. But, it's whether it's Shrewsbury, Konechny, and then they have the Lee kid who's their second leading scorer, a 6'4". All 3 of those kids are 6'4". Not that Glenn doesn't have, shoes, can jump out of the gym.
Don't like contact.
Right.
All 3.
Yeah. You're just going to have to handle the pressure.
Maybe the only one that could handle the physicalness part. The other 2 you mentioned don't.
Yeah. And we saw at Valley, I mean, Shue and Kruger and Schrapp for Glenn, they don't mind. They can mix it up underneath. There were some tenacious rebounding battles in that sectional championship game, and many of them John Glenn won, and they'll, of course, have to do the same. And at the same time, hope that whatever's, defense they throw at St. Joe throws the newly named Huskies out of whack. whack, and they have maybe an average shooting night, if not subpar.
And when I say physical, I'm not talking about throwing elbows.
Yeah, dirty. I know
I'm
what
talking
you mean.
about getting low in a stance when you're posting up against, or when you have to go up against Konechny posting.
Yeah, embracing the physicality.
Get on him to where the next step he makes is on your foot.
Yeah, make him uncomfortable.
Make him, yes. The same goes for Jace Lee.
Yep.
And Lee, he doesn't. You will see. There's film right now where you can go and look. Jace Lee is great when he gets his one-on-ones.
Yep.
But he waits for it to happen. And sometimes that completely takes him out of the offense and the defensive part because he struggles with the physical play. A hell of a ball player. No fans or buts about it. But there's little tendencies that when you look at the St. Joe Indian team, there's some chinks in that armor. But you got to exploit it. And that's the tough part. Because along with those little chinks come pretty heavy armor. I mean, they can score.
Yeah.
They're shooters. They can transition.
Don't you feel, Tony, it's going to be another game where Glenn has to, I don't know, maybe that is that magic number 50 or lower for Glenn? Anything above 50 and it's danger zone for the Falcons in terms of allowing St. Joe to score over?
Yeah, I like what you're saying here, especially with St. Joe and the ability that they can score. Again, this is a team that has scored above 67 points 11 times this year.
Yeah.
So they put up numbers. If you could keep it a low-scoring affair, that means you're in a ball game against an exceptionally good ball club like St. Joe. You're dictating pace. You're getting them in foul trouble, or you're doing something that's keeping those low numbers. I feel it's almost an exact Tippy Valley situation.
I remember that game was 35-30 and Glenn win.
And so if Glenn can clamp down defensively, quit turning over the ball. I mean, in that Valley game, they only had 12, 13 turnovers?
Oh, yeah.
That was it. That's another reason why they won.
And again, we can't stress it enough to our listeners that Valley really came after Glenn.
Sure did.
I mean, they trapped him.
Sure did.
They threw the kitchen sink at him. And in the fourth quarter, it got a little dicey for Glenn taking care of the ball and opened the door a little bit.
Because, believe it or not, Valley came out harder.
Yeah. So the pressure did at times get to Glenn, but it didn't. Again, like you referenced, it didn't snowball. And, I mean, Valley did go on that run in the fourth quarter, but Glenn responded. And this will be another one of those games because St. Joe will have their runs. And you just have to, Travis Hanna's an expert at good timeouts, when to take them, and to settle, whether it's to settle his team down, to stop the other team's momentum, you name it. But And I know we will see a Glenn team tomorrow that is aggressive, not passive, and they'll leave it all on the floor. Now, whether that's good enough to beat St. Joe, of course, remains to be seen. But this isn't an unbeatable St. Joe. Let's not get carried away.
They got 7 losses.
Yeah.
There's a couple of those losses. They
started out the season very, very slow.
They did. They really did.
And now they're winning. And, of course, Glenn went into the postseason 10-13, has rattled off 3 in a row. And I wrote on Sports The Max yesterday, I just would not count out this Glenn group of seniors. I mean, all they've done is win in their careers. And when you think, they're dead and buried or they have no chance, then they put a performance up like they did against Valley.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Glenn had control of that game for almost all the entire game.
Oh, yeah.
What they did was those little things that you don't see on the scoreboard. They played hard on defense. You caught some breaks. Glenn caught breaks in that game. And
I
when
think
when you're working hard, I don't care what anybody says. I don't know how you can't be. You're human. When an official sees an effort play, sometimes you miss a call. When it maybe should have been a foul, it wasn't called because it was an effort kind of play. How do you not reward that? Better yet, where are you at in the game and what the situation is? And it sounds like an excuse, but man, when there's a lot of those plays happening, and they got to happen Saturday night. They got to, I mean, I don't think Glenn has to, they're coming into today's game averaging 48 points a game. They may not need to score 40.
Yeah.
But that means
the lower the total, the better.
Well, the lower the total means you got to bust your hind down on every play on defense.
Yep.
That means you've got to win the game defensively. And that's how Glenn did it, with some really smart coaching. I mean, I think there's a little bit of this that you got to, from the Valley game again, that you got to put into the St. Joe game tomorrow night.
And limit their second chance opportunities, which is what they did against Valley.
That's your number 2 key.
Yep.
Rebounding has got to stay close for Glenn. You will not win every rebound. No one has against St. Joe, I don't think. But you've got to let them know that you are going to be around the glass. Case in point, and we're going to use the Valley game back as an example. How many times did you see, just by Glenn rooting in and being at the correct spot of a Tippy Valley shot where the carom was going to be?
Oh yeah, it was
about
as good of a rebounding game, as you can have.
I can't give you the number because I wasn't counting. I was doing play by play, but that was by being intelligent, understanding where you're at, what you need to be doing, and just basically wanting the rebound. All that good stuff that was happening on the rebounding side were once. They were half to rebounds on the defensive side for Glenn, and they're going to have to do it again. They're going to be outsized, and on paper, St. Joe's they got them. I think Harold's got St. Joe winning by 21.
Yeah.
And now that may happen. I mean, we may see
and that's
an
another
exact
thing
performance
that, in the
regular season.
The St. Joe coaching staff is leery because, again, they're 14 to 18-year-old kids, and they read the Heralds. They hear what their fellow students are telling. Oh, you're going to have a walk in the park to semi-state, and that's when it becomes danger zone.
Because you're making the big game bigger than what it should be.
If you allow your opponent to hang around. And I think that's what Glenn did to perfection. They started that first quarter against Valley, took the air out of it, ran off 2 minutes in the first quarter to start, ran off 90 seconds to start the second quarter. And I think that really flustered Valley, and they wanted to get out and shoot a ton, and nothing came easy for Tippy. And Glenn, and sure, the off shooting had a lot to do with it, but believe me, that zone had a lot to do with it too. I mean, Valley scores 2 points in the first quarter, 5 in the second quarter. I mean, if I told you a week ago,
that's
hey, Tony,
ridiculous.
Valley's going to score 7 points tomorrow
in the first half.
You would have laughed me all the way to.
I would have took that bet and put my second mortgage on the house on it.
Right. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen, and that's what makes Hoosier Hysteria so incredible.
Well, and the environment at Tippy Valley also made things, I think, a little harder on the Vikings themselves.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it became a hornet's nest.
It was. The sixth man was making a difference, but it wasn't working their way.
Yep.
So now negativity starts coming out of the stands.
And they fed off that crowd in a wrong way, too.
Did. And so now I think it's going to be completely different at South Bend, Washington, to a point. But Glenn has shown so far in the postseason that they can be pretty poised when they have to be. Actually, not when they have to be. They have to be.
Yeah, they seem like a bunch that doesn't get rattled.
Yeah, and you couldn't said that even at the final regular season game for Glenn. You couldn't say that. Sometimes, like you said, that light bulb goes off. Bam. I think that could be the case here in the in the regionals. But this is more of a mental attack than it is an execution attack. Because Glenn won and beat a Valley team on effort. 4 quarters.
And they played harder.
They just played harder. So, if you know you can do that, everything else now is between the ears. Every shot you take. But you can't let it get bigger than the moment.
And I think they love the underdog role. I just think there's something with that group that they thrive.
Sure seems like the case, Doug. But, you can't afford to be thinking. So if you miss a shot.
Oh, yeah. Turn the page.
Turn the page. You're done. Get back. Go get the ball back.
Yeah.
And shoot again. This team's got some shooters. So like I said, I had a chance to talk with him yesterday. And, I said, you guys got to be locked in mentally. And when things aren't going your way, make that one play. Just make that one play that changes the entire complexion, because now you got your opponent on the heels.
Yeah, because you never know what play could be the one that turns the tide.
Yeah,
exactly right.
All right, 12:31. You were our Sports Talk on the Max. For just tuning in, we highlight and discuss and promote everything sports from a professional, collegiate, and high school level. So our broadcast, again, for the Glen South Bend St. Joe game is going to be at 6:30 with a pregame show, 7 o'clock tip from South Bend Washington High School. And for our North Judson listeners, you're on the air on WKVI 99.3 FM with Chris and Terry and Justin, as they'll bring you the action live from the floor of North Judson as they take on Gary 21st Century. That will be a 7 p.m. Central tip, so I would imagine Mitch is going to have things a half hour earlier to get things rolling. But we're in another week, man. Another Friday of basketball, or another weekend of basketball, I should say, and I'm stoked for it. I'm ready to go. Let's pause for the call. Let's come back here to Sports Talk on the Max, which continues after this timeout. Sports Talk on the Max here on Max 98.3 and also on our Max 98.3 stream. You can go to our new YouTube channel and type in Max 98.3 stream and make sure you put an exclamation point at the end of it. That is our channel. Then once you subscribe, you get everything that goes live and every other notification known to man. Just the way technology works, it seems like anymore. But yeah, you can catch it on the video side of things as well. All right, Doug, let's move on to some college hoops.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit IU basketball. Don't worry, Purdue fans, we will talk about the Boilermakers, but never seems like a dull moment in Bloomington. To their credit, they've rattled off 3 wins in a row to improve their overall record to 17-13. They were teetering on possibly not having a winning season, but they're coming off a win at Minnesota to move their Big Ten record to 9-10. Still, they would have to win the Big Ten tournament next week to get an NCAA tournament bid, but right now you would think they have a good chance to make the NIT if they want to play in the NIT.
Ask me if I'm a Coach Woodson fan.
Are you a Coach Woodson fan?
No.
And of course,
and you know why? This is what I've been saying. He's had trouble getting the right fits for his coaching style. And a classic example of why he's in trouble was they had a really exceptional kid just decommit.
Yeah, Liam McNeely, the 5-star from the East Coast.
I thought it was a shoo-in that he was going.
Yeah.
There was
he
nothing to
signed
change
a
his mind.
national letter of intent. So now he has asked Indiana to get out of his national letter of intent, and all indications are they will allow him to get out of his letter of intent. And Kansas was his second choice. So from what I've read, at least at this stage, seems like he'll be heading to Lawrence and play for Bill Self. But that is a blow for many reasons. Of course, another 5-star recruit was heading to Bloomington, got an NIL deal through the IU program, and he was a 6'7" kid that was a wing player that could shoot or can shoot from the outside. So he would have given IU next year that kind of threat, but with his decommitment, it means right now as we sit, there are no recruits. Yeah,
somebody said something.
Yeah, and I don't know
turn
what
down
the
an
timing
IU
was.
program unless there's something wrong.
The timing was interesting because the day before, Indiana University came out and gave the vote of confidence that Mike Woodson definitely will be back for the 2024-25 season. Now,
but we also know who the ones that are making the decision too.
Yeah, Woodson is about to finish his third year at IU. First two, they made NCAA appearances, tournament appearances this year. Like I said, barring something unforeseen in Minneapolis next week, they won't be going to the NCAA. So if you talk to IU people, it wasn't really a surprise that he got another year. But now, 24 hours later, after the vote of confidence for Woodson, McNeely says, let me out. Something's fishy there because it's not about money, I'm telling you, because IU has good NIL coin.
That's right. And it's the program.
It's
there's
one
all
of
kinds
the elite
of programs in the nation.
That
how do you decommit from that?
It's not the IU of old. It's he doesn't like. It's hard to read kids' minds, but let's be real and honest that IU hasn't done a whole lot for a long time in terms of wins and advancing the NCAA tournament, winning Big Ten championships, and like you said, maybe his group around him has been peppering him with, why don't you go to school XYZ where you can not only get good NIL money, but you can win big. And I don't know. There's just a lot going on in Bloomington.
I would like to think that's not the case. I mean, but it very well could be. Reading everything about the McNally kid, he wasn't that kind of person.
Yeah.
Listen.
And again, you can get money almost.
People shake your hand and say, hey, we love what you do, and then turn around and say, what an idiot.
Yeah. When you're that kind of player, you can get the money.
Yeah, that's, it's whether or not you feel you're going to have a chance to play.
You're turning down a Kansas to go. I mean, again, 15, 20 years ago, you could see it. But now, considering the struggles IU has had, and, again, Woodson inherited Trace Jackson Davis. He didn't recruit one of the best players to ever play in Bloomington. Now, he did recruit Hood Schifino, who was a lottery pick, and went to the NBA last year after 1 year. And he did recruit Ware from Oregon. But I'm telling you right now, that was a money deal. That Ware went to where the NIL money was good, and again, to a solid.
So it begs the question, is that the kind of fit
right
your program wants to have?
Yep. And oh, by the way, all indications are Ware's bye-bye at the end of the year. He's a projected first round pick. Yeah. So he's out the door. And that's where the snowball effect comes. So, because now here McNeely was the lone recruit in the present day recruiting class for the Hoosiers. And by the way, they had 31 players that they offered scholarships to, 13 of which they had on official visits in Bloomington, and they got 0.
Yeah.
I mean, that is cause for concern. Now, again, when the season ends, there'll be the transfer portal still, and you can fill up a class. But again, talking to IU people, we're off to the NBA. There's a lot of questions. What does Mbako, does he declare for the draft? What about Renew? And even if they decide, well, I'm not ready for the NBA, there's nothing that says they don't go to another program and play. Then also Galloway and Leal, Anthony Leal, the former Mr. Basketball from Indiana, they could come back and play their COVID year, but do they want to? Of course, the NIL money's good. Or do they want to go to another program and play their final year, which they can do and don't have to sit out?
Well, I think both are probably going to stay.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think they're probably going to stay, and even remembering Trey when he played at the academy, the kid's just loyal to his teammates. He had those same traits.
There may not be a whole lot of teammates left.
Well, I mean, that IU's going to fill.
Well, they'll fill the draw. They'll fill. That's the other thing. They had 10 newcomers this year. Yeah. You're looking at, again, just the numbers game, 5+ newcomers next year.
And to kind of speak a little bit more on Trey, I just wish he was in a better situation.
That's the other thing to consider.
Because I just don't feel he fits in. Now, listen, I've talked to some really people close, and they don't necessarily agree with me on that. And that's fine. I'm just judging by what I see and then what the performance there is.
I would ask, is there a better fit for Trey Galloway out there?
Yeah. Sure,
I would agree with you 100%.
Couple schools that would want to Trey Galloway.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if Trey is, next level after college.
Right.
But God, you can go make a living playing G basketball or going to Europe.
There are Big Ten schools that would like to have Trey Galloway.
Sure.
That's a no-brainer.
Sure. Like I said, I think, I'm talking about fit. And sometimes on the court, you can just see whether or not they're fit or not, and especially how the coach reacts to them. And I've seen both good and side, but then I've seen Woodson rip into Trey when it wasn't his fault.
Remember the land of misfit toys and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Yeah.
That, to me, at least this year, seems like there's a lot of misfit toys. And again, I'm not on the inside. I don't proclaim to be an expert on Indiana basketball. I feel like I have a lot of years watching the Big Ten and watching Indiana basketball and their history. I just sometimes doubt. I'm not talking about Galloway necessarily at all, but I just wonder if some of those guys, say Aware, is really playing for the name on his jersey and not playing for the NIL money.
I'm hard pressed to put Galloway in that category.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to follow up with what you said. I could definitely see because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he graduates this year with his undergrad degree.
That's hard to believe he's already graduated.
And maybe he'll pursue a master's, and his NIL deal's good enough, and he loves Bloomington. Fine, that's great. And he stays there.
Hey, you're still in a prestigious program.
Yeah,
I
just, and again, he only has 1 year left, but. As they say, winning's fun, and I don't care how good
the Boilermakers.
I don't care how good the money is. It gets old not going to the NCAA tournament. Again, this is only going to be Trey's first year not going to the tournament. Or maybe his second, because his freshman year I don't think they went. And I'm sure maybe a big part of it will be the suitors. Who comes after him? Because, again, I can guarantee our listeners there are ongoing talks, even though they're not supposed to be. There are ongoing talks with players from representatives of schools. It's tampering, but, again, it's no holds barred now.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the land of the transfer portal and the NIL.
Right. Well, like I said, that continues to be it's going to be an interesting finish for IU. and then afterwards.
And we
for
should
sure.
bring up, and we were going to, we'll talk about this here as our show comes to a close, but, IU will go for their fourth straight win on Sunday. They host Michigan State on Senior Day. And
That's a winnable game.
yeah. And why is that important? Because right now the Hoosiers sit, I believe, in the 8th spot, either 7 or 8 in the seeding of the Big Ten tournament. And, they could move up to the, I believe, 6th spot, if I'm not mistaken, with a victory. And Michigan State,
That's a jump.
yeah, they could tie Michigan State. Michigan State's 10-9 in the Big Ten, 18-12 overall, and so Indiana could tie Michigan State and improve their seeding. So there's a lot to play for. Of course, the Spartans, they have that long consecutive NCAA tournament streak going. If they lose, I still think they're in, but that would drop them to 18-13, 10-10 in the league. But again, their resume, from all indications, are they're pretty strong. But I'm sure Tom Izzo doesn't want to put a win at IU would be sort of a
Just
feather in the cap.
Yeah. What the doctor ordered.
Punch their ticket.
All right, the Boilers. They're just winning, and it's never ceases to amaze me. Zach Edey is Zach Edey here, but man, Braden Smith is pushing down the stretch.
Yeah, the shot he made in Champaign the other night with just under 19 seconds to go.
That's MVP stuff.
Yeah, that's all American.
Yeah, that is all American stuff right there.
Yeah, he took that shot over Shannon, one of Illinois' best players, who's 6'6", 6'7", and he said in the post game that Matt Painter, he looked to Painter to see what the play was because shot clock's winding down. It was like 6 or 5 on the clock, and Painter just said, "Go make a play," and so Smith called out a play X or something like that, and he looked at Shannon's eyes, and as soon as his eyes moved, Smith went up from about 26, 27 feet and just drained it and gave Purdue a 6-point lead. And, of course, that's what they won by over in Champaign. Gave Purdue its second straight outright Big Ten title. And everyone says, oh, this is the same old Purdue team, last year that lost to the number 16 seed. No, it's not. But, I mean, Braden Smith's an All-American.
Debunks all that. Crap.
Yeah. If you win with guards, I like Purdue's chances with Braden Smith. And, oh, by the way, Zach Edey's even better.
Yeah.
And you have Mason Gillis, who's knocking down 45% of his three-pointers. And you mentioned Zach Edey, of course, Sunday when they host Wisconsin in Mackey Arena. That'll be Zach Edey's final game, and what a career it's been. I mean, he arguably one of the two, if not the best Boilermakers ever. Of course, Rick Mount only played 3 years, and right now, Edey's on pace to break Mount's all-time scoring record at Purdue. But Edey's put himself in the conversation as one of the greatest players ever to play in the Big Ten.
Well, I'm preparing for next year when Edey's not in, and Purdue probably doesn't get off to the greatest starts, or if Purdue doesn't get. See, you don't have about a 7'4"
Yeah.
guy winning. Yeah, the same person you're complaining about right now.
Yeah.
That, has got incredible God-given ability at his size.
And he affects the game on both sides of the floor like there haven't been many players in college basketball ever. Yeah. And, it was fun to be over in Champaign the other night and listen to the opposing fans. Of course, they got on Edey, right when he came out for warm-ups. But it got to the point, I think Edey had finished with 28, that every time he touched the ball, there was just like groans. They were on him, and then they realized once he touches
it wasn't working.
he's almost automatic, and then it's almost like a helpless cause. So, yeah, I'm sure in the off season and going into next year, you'll have Matt Painter. You'll hear a million times from Matt's mouth. You don't replace Zach Edey, and Purdue won't replace Zach Edey. You can't replace Zach Edey. But I'll tell you what, Matt and company are going to ride him as long as they can.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, and
Who wouldn't?
And they hope, of course, that this is the year that they finally go to a Final Four. And again, I listened some to all kinds of pundits, and all of them. Again, it's almost like how we were talking about the Glenn St. Joe game, when you're saying, this team, they can't be beat by a 16 seed this year. They can't not make it out of the first weekend. Then you sort of cringe, like, anything can happen in that crazy NCAA tournament. That's why we love it so much. But I have to admit, Tony, I mean, I don't see how they can't make it out of the first weekend. I mean, they're going to be playing in Indianapolis, and given the fact of how Braden Smith's playing and how Edey's playing and the role players are playing, it would be a stretch to see. Now, once you get to the Sweet 16, all bets are off, and that's where the college game has changed so much since the 1980s. The parity is just off the charts. It's unlike any sport, professional, college, that there is. And again, that's why we love March Madness so much.
If the Boilermakers are going to be a Final Four team, which I believe they can be, a couple things got to happen. They got to shore up. They got to shore up their periods of inconsistency that allows teams to get back into a game. Because when you get into the postseason, the level of concentration is different, emotional. And listen, if you don't think Purdue isn't going to have a target on their back by every fan that's not a Purdue Boilermaker fan, I mark my word, that place will become loud, and it'll become like you mentioned the comparison to Tippy Valley and St. Joe. It's going to sound like a Tippy Valley. It's going to be loud because you are public enemy number one, because you got a 7-4 guy, you guys been winning. So I'm hoping the between the ears portion of this Boilermaker team is strong enough to make it to the Final Four, and especially when they get to the Final Four. Because they're not, Boiler Nation is not going, we will not be outnumbered by the fans. That's how many people right now hate Purdue.
Well, and remember, there's no, I can't envision a scenario where now, since they won at Illinois and won the outright Big Ten championship, their resume is second to none, and they will be the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament, meaning they will be put in the Midwest region, which means they will play in Indianapolis the first weekend. The second weekend, they will play in Detroit. There will be an unbelievable home court advantage for Purdue.
Well, you may say that, but I'm just telling you there are many.
Yeah. But there are fans that they love the underdog. They love the underdog. But and again, that doesn't always mean you advance. Perfect example is last year the Purdue played in Columbus, Ohio. Again, there were a lot of Purdue fans, not nearly as many as you're going to see in a few weeks. But they also played in Louisville in the Elite Eight against Virginia, and we all know that miracle play that Bennett's team pulled off to send the game into overtime, and eventually Virginia won that game and went on to win the national championship. So, and again, Purdue fans remember Detroit in 87, 88. It was actually Pontiac, the Silverdome, where they lost to Mitch Richmond and Kansas State, a team they had beaten by 29 earlier in the season. So again, one game format, anything can happen. But you have to like Purdue's chances with the way Braden Smith. And oh, by the way, Now, we'll see how he plays on Sunday, but Fletcher Lawyer was huge at Illinois. He scored 7 in a row down the stretch, finished with 18 points, was the team's second leading scorer. So if they get anywhere close to that production, all of a sudden that team becomes even more
Tougher,
difficult to beat.
Yeah. Lawyer is a key kid. He really is.
And Mason hit a couple clutch threes in that game at Illinois. It will be a very difficult day Sunday, saying goodbye to Zach Eady, Ethan Morton, Mason Gillis. I mean, those guys have been part of an unbelievable run. Remember, this is a program, I know all the NCAA tournament failures, 3 consecutive years number 1 in the nation ranked. First time in Big Ten history. And back-to-back Big Ten championships. Again, we talk about the 3 double-digit seed losses in the NCAA tournament. Keep in mind, the last 5 tournament appearances by Purdue, they will make their 9th straight NCAA tournament appearance this year. But their last 5 appearances, they've gone to 3 Sweet 16 3 Sweet 16 trips. So
well, that all sounds beautiful because one, I'm a Boilermaker fan. Let me tell you something. That doesn't mean diddly squat.
right.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yep. And they know it's Final Four bust.
It's right. It is one game at a time.
Yep.
And you better know what you have to be doing to advance. And that's where I'm not questioning the Boilers. We got a group that understands their roles, and they stick to them. And then it's almost like there's not even hardly a game plan defensively except just play like hell. Just be chaotic. Just get that one guard who you know is going to be the one that can hurt you and just make his life miserable. Just make it tough. See, that's the approach I feel wins you into a Final Four.
And they answered a lot of critics the other night, including myself, that, again, in fairness, that was Purdue's toughest Big Ten road game. And they faced an Illinois team, which I'm telling you, Illinois is talented enough to go to the Final Four. They are athletic, they are long, and they held Coleman Hawkins and Shannon down to 13 and 11 points apiece. That was a very impressive performance. And Purdue's undefeated against top 25 teams this season. And keep in mind, UConn, up until the Marquette game, had not won a road game against a ranked team since, I believe, 2016 or 14. And, Purdue just keeps notching one after another after another. They have the most quad 1 wins, and they have, when you take their quad 1 and quad 2 wins on their resume, it's double what any other team has. So Matt Painter's Boilermakers are sitting pretty, and they no doubt want to finish it off the regular season, that is, with a win over the Badgers on Sunday.
Sports Talk on the Max continues after this. All right, Doug, you want to get a prediction on our high school games tomorrow night?
Oh, boy, put me on the spot, Tony Ross.
We got a few seconds here.
I hate to say it, and I'll catch a lot of flack, but I think the end of the road is tomorrow night for Glenn. I just think South Bend St. Joe might have too much, but it's going to be a lot closer than before. I think I wanted to call them the Indians, so I better not. The Huskies.
I'm going to struggle with that Saturday night.
The Huskies. I bet the Huskies will win by 6 points. But again, it'll be
close.
Yeah, one possession game, and boy, that North Judson 21st century game. I just have my questions whether North Judson can dictate the tempo enough to beat 21st century. So I'm going to go 21st century by 8 points. Mm-hmm. And I hope I'm wrong on both. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be a tough one for Glenn. But just after watching what they did at Tippy Valley and the amount of studs that Glenn just kept disrupting, now that I know they can do that, I feel a lot better about the chances here for Glenn. So I'm going to pick the Falcons, but may come down to the last shot. It really may. Gary 21st Century, when you look at them, they got a handful that Judson's going to have to figure out the correct matchup on. But I just got a gut feeling somehow, some way, North Judson's going to find a way to win at the Nest. They just do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the Jays. So I'm going with the two hometowners, and I just got gut feelings about it. But with the understanding, both St. Joe and Gary 21st are exceptional ball clubs. So.
And believe me, to every Falcon fan out there, I embrace coming up. You can come up to me and tell me I was flat out wrong on my prediction while the Falcons are cutting down the nets. That will not hurt my feelings whatsoever.
Yep. All right, that's it for Sports Talk on the Max, and also on our live stream, video stream, and you can catch that and subscribe to Max 98.3 stream with an exclamation point, okay? So when you go on YouTube, usually they have that big purple M. When you see that, that's the one. Click on it, subscribe. It's already got some shows that we got on there. We're still testing out our stuff, and hopefully we got the entirety here on the video stream as well. So tomorrow night, bring your radios. You can catch it on 98.3 up there at the gym as well. And just get ready for some good Saturday night basketball right here on Max 98.3. So hopefully we'll talk to you again. Tomorrow morning we'll have the Saturday Morning Coaches Show, so we will hope you can join us as well. Have a great Friday and stay dry.